Okay. So is there any other things you want to share or talk about today?
Share today.
You had a question yesterday. I'm trying to remember what. Norma, do you remember the question he had yesterday?
I was going to ask me.
Oh, no, I thought we just, well, we had an ascension. We can ask Mike about
Let me
that.
ask a question. You've heard of a person by the name of Dr. O.
Yeah.
Okay. He does an opening where he doesn't go through anything. He just has everyone lie down or whatever, and he goes through the yod, hey, bah, hey for a while. The resonance of on your solar plexus, how it should feel. And from that, he talks about, I don't know if you've ever heard it, Mike, now, and he does this for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then step outside your body. There's another, first of all, I said raise your hands. There's a second, almost talks about a second body, which I'm certain he's referring to as your spirit. And by the end of it, he has you step outside your body and greet Jesus, and you're in eternity. Is that just a different way of ascending? Is that?
Well, in a sense, our spirit has the ability to engage outside our body, and we need to train our spirit to be able to engage the realms of the kingdom, and to be there in dual realms connected to this realm. So yeah, our spirit has to leave our body in a sense, but it's still connected to it. And if we're joined to the Lord, we become one spirit with Him. Therefore, we can be in two places at once, if you like. So our spirit can be a dimensional place within us, but also engaging in the realms of heaven. So your spirit can be in two places at once. So you're still, in a sense, within your own body, soul, and looking to encompass it as an atmosphere of the kingdom, being joined to the Lord. But our spirit can also be conscious in the realm of heaven. Now, our spirit consciousness is not the same as our soul consciousness. So our soul can be conscious and aware of being here, like I am now. I'm aware, I'm talking to you, I'm listening, and therefore my soul is engaged. So my mind, emotions, will, everything's engaged in this conversation. My physical body's here, but my spirit, I step into the realm of heaven every day and I stay there. So my spirit is engaged there. Now, I'm looking for my spirit engaged in heaven to release heavenly wisdom, heavenly authority, insight from that realm into this realm, so that my soul, in cooperation, releases that. So I'm speaking to you, but I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say. I'm just speaking as a flow from my spirit, but my body and soul have to agree, and they do, because that's where our gateways are open, and we're not blocked in that way. So I'm flowing. Now, in terms of Yod Hey Vav Hey, the sense of God's name, and focusing on God, I do that. We do that here. We sing that, but our attention is always on where God is. Now, you could say that God is in me, but I see the Yod Hey Vav Hey in a sense as part of the four faces of God and the governmental aspect of God's person. It's not like, well, I'm going to engage with the Father now, or I'm going to engage with Jesus now, or I'm going to engage with the Holy Spirit. This is almost like the four faces of God, like represented by the four living creatures before the throne, are the representation of God's government. So the kingly, prophetic, apostolic, and priestly functions are about government. So when I engage that around the ark of the presence of God, and I'm always looking to engage in His government. you know, so I can bring that kingly order or engage in the oracles of God or express the legislative call, you know, or engage in priesthood and go back into his presence and, you know, touch those things in eternity, you know. So he's probably in that sort of exercise looking to free the spirit from the tethers to the body so that the spirit can engage back into its original place of creation, which is eternity. Maybe back into God's heart or back into what was, um, which I think is perfectly legitimate. I do it a different way. You know, I engage the ark and I step into his name and then I go back into what was from within him. So if you're coming out of your body, spiritually speaking, where is your spirit then engaging? And therefore you have to be focused on where is it going to engage. So if your spirit is outside of your body, where is it? Is it in this spiritual realm around us? Is it going to engage in one of the heavenly realms? Is it going to engage in eternity? And depending on what you're looking to do, you begin to focus on where your spirit is going to go. And that's why you need the pathways to re-engage those places that you've been so that your spirit can engage, whether it's a pathway of relationship or going back into Eden, the Garden of God. Now, I go back into Eden from within my own spirit. So when I open my first love gate, you know, that first love gate is a two-way gate, so I can go back through that in the river of life and go back into Eden in heaven and engage God there. That's all the pathway of relationship for me. Now, I can think and go there from wherever. You know, it's not like I have to sort of physically go through a gate. It's my spirit is using the open access to engage heaven. And it sometimes helps people to think, well, I'm walking through this gateway and I'm going into that realm. But in reality, what you're doing is your spirit is going into that realm because you have access, and you begin to, by faith, engage that access through thought and step into it. And if it's your pathway, you can do that. You know, I don't walk along the pathway, you know, by the waterfalls and that stuff when I engage in Eden. I just go to wherever place I'm going to engage. If I engage the river of life or the tree of life or throne of grace or whatever, I just go there because I've made it a pathway that's now part of my being, and therefore it's encoded within my mind in a sense. You know, the neural pathways are connected to it. It's a doorway to any of those things because I've made it mine, and because I've practiced it, my mind contains the remembrance of those neural pathways, and my heart contains the place where I can engage through it. So the memory of it is encoded within my heart. You know, well, I can do that by sowing that seed into my garden. You know, there's lots of different analogies, and a lot of them are sort of metaphorical analogies of things we can do to make sure that that is sown within our hearts, and therefore we carry it with us and we have access through it. And sometimes for people like to have an entrance point, so a doorway is a good entrance point that you can have. And when you first practice going through that doorway, you know, it's a good pathway to develop. God comes into me, I can go back into where he is and I can engage. I guess there are just different ways of doing that. What I would be careful of in it is creating a ritual out of it. So you always have to lie down and you always have to chant Yod Hey Vav Hey. Otherwise, because that to me becomes something then that's reliant on the process rather than just the relationship. You know, so I would say that, you know, it's definitely a valid thing to do. You can do it. Do you have to do it that way? No. Therefore, be careful you don't get fixed on a way of entry. and therefore you become religious about it, and it becomes, something which is ritualistic. And of course, that can be counterfeited, and you see all the chants and the new age chants and the different things to open up some sort of access to something. I'm not saying that, singing Yod Hey Vav Hey. I mean, I do that. We do that in our worship all the time as a sort of recognition of the authority of the kingdom, but also a sense where we're looking to engage around the presence of God and go into His presence, and access it. But that's more sort of a spontaneous thing. I often play Yod Hey Vav Hey when I engage personally around the ark, because it helps just focus my thoughts and attentions, and sort of cuts out background noise and other things that can be a distraction. But that's probably 20%, 30% of the time I might do that, and the other 70% I don't. But it doesn't mean I don't access or engage. Sort of find something that works and develop the relational aspect of it, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for an intimacy with God, whether it be relational or responsibility wise, so that we're always dependent on seeking the relationship and rather than the experience, or pursuing something for an encounter. We want relationship, and the experiences are from the relationship, not the other way round, but I'm not knocking any particular ways of doing it. I think my view in some of the different things that go on is to be aware of giving people the freedom to explore and engage heaven the way they're led by their spirit and by God. So I'm sort of uncomfortable on a little bit on some of the corporate ascensions where everyone tries to see or everyone tries to follow a particular person or way. Now, some of, in the activations that I've done, I want it to be Jesus who's leading people, and people have to be free to go wherever Jesus wants them to go. And therefore, if I sort of say, well, hey, let's go to here, or let's follow this path to here, and people don't want to follow that path because their spirit says, well, I want to stay here, then stay there. You don't have to follow. It's just, here's an opportunity for people to find a pathway and then look to develop that pathway themselves. But on that journey, people have to be free to follow the lead that their spirit and Jesus may want to take them. And so sometimes it's like, that's why I don't ever, or in those engagements, it's not about people saying, well, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that, and then everyone else trying to actually see it, because that then draws everyone into someone else's perspective rather than God's. So I do feel there can be a danger in that people try, and then someone says something and everyone tries to engage it. Well, then you're using your imagination to try and conjure up something rather than using your imagination as a doorway and then enter into whatever experience you have. I don't try to use my imagination to engage something once I've stepped through. And again, I think the illustration of a starter motor on a car is a good one. You turn the engine over using the starter motor. When it fires, then you don't use the starter motor anymore. You just use the engine. So, imagination is good as a doorway, and it's good to engage. But when you step through, you've got to be open for whatever you engage, whether it's through vision or impressions or whatever it might be. So I'm sort of a little bit concerned over some of the ways that people may get drawn or pressurized into following something, or trying to conjure up what someone else is seeing. what we tend to do is we have the experiences and we share them afterwards. Now, sometimes those are experiences which are similar, and which, wow, we're seeing us. And sometimes people see each other, or are aware of each other, which is fine. Most of my time when I engage in those things, I'm just focused on God. I'm really just interested in what's happening with God. What does He want? How do I engage with Him? So I'm not really too concerned what anyone else is particularly doing. But when we sort of, say, as a bench, engage, we always engage and then we step out and then we then share what we're engaging afterwards, and then we review it and we actually seek for insight that brings to give us a bigger picture, and then we may choose to go back and engage something. We may feel, hey, we need to do this in the realm of heaven together, and we'll do that. But what we don't try and do is try and sort of engineer it, if you like, in an unnatural way. So yeah, that's some of around that sort of subject. I mean, did you have a particular reason for asking that?
Oh, it was so different than anything I'd done before. I was, and actually, it was interesting when I did the resonance with them. I could actually feel it. When I read about the solar plexus, which he talked about, where the resonance was, it's where all the nerve endings come and join and go to different parts of the body. So I started thinking, in my own mind anyway, what I logically thought through was, what's happening is, as I'm saying his name, it's actually resonating through my whole body and just opening everything up. And probably a form is, and he talks about stepping into Jesus' name through that.
Yeah, I have no issue with that whatsoever, because frequency and resonance are what we're looking to engage with. We're looking to come into an alignment, a minor frequency engaging a major frequency, and then we begin to resonate with that and access it. Absolutely no problem. And absolutely stepping into his name is what we're looking to do. It's just, what does that mean? What does it mean to step in his name? Well, for me, when you're in the name of Jesus, you carry his governmental authority, his power of attorney. So a lot of that I always associate with the governmental aspect of things, which is what those 4 letters of his name represent in that way. Because it's certainly not talking about Father, Son, and Spirit in the same way as you would engage the Father or engage Jesus, because Yod Hey Vav Hey isn't actually Jesus as a person.
Yeah, he goes. He starts with Yod Hey Vav Hey, and then he starts going on the same. Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. He's going that. And the name is Yeshua, with the resonance rolling through. So I guess it's a way of his. I guess that he's worked. That a way he can show his people that he works with another way to do it. I guess again, the thing what you said is there's different ways. There's no one pathway. As long as you get there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, once you've established the pathway, then it's yours. What we all have to do is find our own pathway of entrance, and then we can access that instantly. Because it's ours. It's always an open door of engagement.
Yes.
And if different people have different ways that help us do that, but ultimately it needs to become our way, I think, and that's the key. If it's our way, then that will enable us to engage without the ritual of it. Because once it's open, it's open. I don't need to chant the name of anything to create a resonance. I already have a resonance because I open that, and I open my spirit, and I open first love, and I know there's an open heaven because the doorway is open, and therefore that truth is my entrance You know, so I can enter through the word of that truth. You know,
Like, for
yeah,
example, if you're, because you've I know you've gone up with so many times now with so many people, could you, at the point you're at, by conscious thought, go from right now talking to me into Eden, just by conscious thought being in Eden? Is that what you're saying?
yeah,
The pathway is already open. I want to go to Eden. Boom, I'm there.
yeah. Because
That's
because that is my spirit engaging, and my spirit can go to any of these places. If I want my soul and spirit to engage together, then I have to disengage from here.
I
So
wanted to.
you know, so I disengage. So and I disengage generally by closing my eyes. You know, but my spirit can be engaged and my soul be engaged in two different dimensions, um, and I'm spiritually aware and connected, but my soul is still connected here, and that's that's how I can operate in two realms. But when I choose to engage my soul in the activity, then I'm disengaging from what's going on around me, so that I can use my imagination or I can use that to engage. Now, I don't have to sort of try and conjure it up in any way. Essentially, I just by choice engage because it's already a pathway within my life. So, but for me, I can engage the realm of the spirit with my eyes open, and I can engage that realm of the spirit around me and be conscious and flowing. You know, um, I can access heaven by in my spirit engaging there, um, and be connected, but not necessarily always conscious. And it's sort of learning to be able to live in dual realms. Now, if we're going to go there, spirit, soul, and body, then we'd have to be trans-relocated. So all the matter of our being would have to be taken from this dimension into another. But certainly, my spirit is capable of being connected in different ways. But it is finding something that works and then using that. I mean, I'm fairly sort of disciplined, and I like to to know that I'm consciously surrendering. I want to choose to consciously surrender every day, which I do by opening my first love gate, and inviting the presence of God. Engaging the river of life and drinking living water. Being yoked to Jesus, and inviting the Father to sit on the throne of the seat of rest and government in my life. And once I do that, my spirit, soul, body gates are available for the flow of being joined to the Lord and creating an atmosphere around me. Now, I would do that every day because I believe I want to be conscious and deliberate about it by choice, because I have free will to choose whether I want to, invite God to be on the throne of my life or not. And if I don't, I'm not choosing to. It's not an assumption that he is. You have to choose. That's why I would do that every day, but I do it in relationship every day, and I allow my spirit to direct when I do that, what flow in connection with God I do it in. Sometimes, like today, I spent time with God in the garden of my heart, and we dialogued about some things which were at a sort of a deeper level. And I did all that before I engaged in heaven, but he's in me, so I can engage him there. And it was lying down in green pastures and uh, listening and talking and fellowshipping and communing there. And sometimes, I engage that really quickly, I don't go into the garden of my heart. I just invite the river of life to flow into me and flow through me, and I step into presenting myself as a living sacrifice and engage the cross, and in looking for, okay, what am I authorized or mandated to do today? Because I'm looking for a governmental responsibility. I mean, I can, but I don't have to go through that process either. Sometimes my spirit will say, right, come and be seated on the right hand of the Father by the Ancient of Days and administrate something now. So I just want to be led by the Spirit, but I do want to be conscious about making sure that I am presented before God so that I can serve Him today. And you may do that in different ways. For me, it helps to have a pathway to follow, and sometimes that path will be jumps, sometimes it will be like a walk, but it is all engagement and accessing through my spirit. But it is very deliberate. I mean, I choose, I choose to deny myself, take up the cross and follow Him. I choose to present myself as a living sacrifice. I don't have to, but I choose to because I want to become engaged with Him in such a way that He can take me and use me and transform me and change me and do whatever He needs to do in me to allow the fullness of that I'm called to do today to function. Quite often I will go and stand in His name, and I'll go back into what was and just stand there, and my spirit will just get filled by standing in what was, and I'll look into what will be and see it from the perspective of what was, and I'll just stand there. And sometimes it'll be, I'm not looking at, well, I'm trying to see what the future's like. I'm trying to stay in the past. In the past, it's in eternity, in what was, and know God's heart, so that then I have the authority to release that, to create that future, because I'm creating the desire that's in God's heart. But often I need to change to be able to do that. So the future won't change until I do, which means being open for transformation and change. So, okay, yeah, carry on.
Dr. O speaks about the soul in a way that I haven't heard anybody else talk about the soul. And the soul is a part of the being that accesses resources in heaven. The soul is the part that brings a platform between the body and the spirit and brings the resources back into this realm. And he even says, a lot of people go to heaven, and the resources that God has provided for us to do the things that He's asked us to do are there, but the soul is the part of our being that allows us to bring it back into this realm. Do you have any comment on that, Mike?
I'm looking a lot at the soul right now, and looking at the gateways and looking at how the soul functions. I believe the soul is the mediator between the spirit and the body and the world around us, and the soul needs to be in agreement and cooperation and unity and oneness. I believe the soul has often been so damaged, fractured, and separated that it's very difficult for the soul to be the mediator of anything other than that which is received from the outside. So I see that the soul needs transformation. It isn't perfected like the spirit. The spirit is as God created it. It can grow stronger, if you like, as the more we engage it and understand and function from it, but it's as God created it. The soul has been shaped and formed by nurture, nature, and trauma. So it's not it's not pure. You know, we're not pure-hearted. You know, I mean, it says that the heart is deceitfully wicked. Well, we have to make sure that we see our soul transformed, transfigured, changed, healed, restored, made whole. Like Psalm 23 says, he restores my soul. Well, if he's going to restore it, what is he going to restore it to? Well, I guess his original purpose for it, rather than the purpose that was created by the world. So our conscience would need to be purified, refined, and functioning to direct and protect us. Our imagination would need to be purified, and so the screen works to interpret and help us understand. So our reason center, our mind, our emotions, will, you know, how many of us have had our emotions damaged? And therefore they're not reliable in informing us of things because they carry hurt or pain or fear or other things within it. So in essence, I agree with the principle and the concept that the soul mediates the spiritual realm, and this is how I see it working. The more my spirit engages in heaven, the more I'm there as a light being, the more my spirit takes on the image that God created it to be in, and the more I vibrate with that frequency. So I'm resonating with the frequency that my image, my eternal image, was created in. And then when my spirit and soul connect, my soul, being the minor frequency of my life rather than the major one, which my spirit is, should resonate with my spiritual vibration, frequency, light, wavelength, and then take on that image and come into agreement or alignment with that image. So in a sense, probably is saying a very similar thing, but I don't think you can, I'm not sure you can just send your soul into heaven independently. So it has to be the mediator, because that's how we connect with the world, through our soul. You know, our soul is self-conscious and aware of our body's senses, because that's how it's learned all its life. You know, since the soul formed, it has learned to perceive through its experiences of the world. Now, it also carries a record of our parents' memories, which are encoded within our DNA and form the basis of our heart, that forms the basis of our soul in the beginning. So if they're not pure, then we have to deal with them to make sure we're not motivated by anything which comes from our genetic material, or the iniquity which is carried as a memory within that. Because our genetic material, or our heart, carries memory. So the two cells that come together, the sperm and the ova, actually form and carry with it the memory of generations. Now that can be physical memory, in a sense, in terms of encoded genetic material, seed, within our sequences of DNA, or it can be memory material, if you like, the memories that the cells, those two cells, carry. And that is not necessarily good. So I think we have to do a lot of refining of the soul, renewing of our mind, to come into the conformity of the image, because we're supposed to be conformed to the image of Christ. Well, that's a process of our spirit becoming aware of God's purpose for us and our destiny, and then engaging with our soul, and so for our soul becoming aligned to that, in agreement with it, and then flowing and cooperating and everything working together as one in wholeness. but that's certainly not most people's experience. And I think unless, if you're presenting it as, well, you can just do this in the power of the soul, that can be a very dangerous thing if the soul is not refined. Because the motivations, the thoughts and intentions of the heart, dividing soul and spirit, bone and marrow, thoughts and intentions of the heart, is a process of purification and refinement. I wouldn't have trusted my soul to mediate between the things of heaven independently without having done a lot of work on it. So I'm not sure whether he's intimating there that our soul is completely sorted out as soon as we become born again, and therefore our soul is complete, because I definitely don't agree with that. But he may not be inferring that.
Mike,
Yeah.
people that have said that they've been up and they've actually taken back with them a gem onto the earth. How listening to you, it kind of popped into my mind that it was by God through their spirit. Their soul is the delivery system on the earth, because that's your connection with this realm. And it would have to, if they did that, it would have to be at the end. The soul has to deliver it onto the earth, because it can't be the spirit, because our soul is a connection with this realm. I think that's what you just said.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. In my own journey, the more I have engaged the soul to bring transformation, so that the spirit and soul are reintegrated. I mean, Ian Clayton does a whole teaching on, dividing soul and spirit, and using the word as like a wedge and a hammer to, essentially all that's doing is separating the soul ties that the soul has created from the spirit to fulfill its own independence. And once you separate those soul ties, then you re-establish correct ties, because now the spirit is conscious and able to engage, being joined to God with the soul. When we're born, our spirit comes into our body, contained within our soul, and is separated from God and us. So it's in darkness. It's unaware. It carries no conscious awareness, because it's separated from God, who is light, and it's separated from awareness. And that's why we have to be born again. So our spirit becomes alive and aware and God conscious. It also becomes aware that we are a person that's lived without it. And then it's like, okay, the flesh and the spirit compete, it says. They wrestle with one another for who is going to actually be in charge. And that wrestling process is obviously an ongoing one until the soul is in a place of surrender. And eventually the soul gives in, because the soul recognizes, hey, this is what I was always intended to receive, life from the spirit, from the inside out, not actually all the damage that I received from the outside in. So, but it's a journey of discovery in which the soul then connects with the spirit and has to yield control of our life to the spirit and to the directions that come from the spirit through God. And so it is always, the soul is always a minor frequency that needs to resonate with the major frequency of the spirit, and therefore carry that spiritual alignment, and come into agreement of unity and oneness and wholeness and everything else. But it definitely is the mediator. Your spirit can engage the spiritual realms. I can see the spiritual realms, but I'm interpreting it in my mind. It's not separate. The only way I can cognitively engage is if my mind interprets whatever signals my spirit sends it. So the spirit, can't operate independently, because my mind has to be involved in interpreting the communication. Otherwise, how would I know? Because my spirit in itself can only pass that information to the mind so I can become aware of it consciously. Now, my spirit can be aware of things that my mind isn't, absolutely. And my spirit can lead me according to those things that it's aware of, because I receive all sorts of things when I engage in heaven that I'm not conscious of at the point in time, and my spirit is able to direct me from what it's received. But ultimately, it's for me to understand that and cooperate with it, I need to surrender. Either to, hey, I don't need to know, so I'm just led by my spirit, instinctively guided, directed, and my soul just says yes, 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 yes. Or when there's something cognitive that God says, I want you to choose, then I have to know, so I need to have my spirit communicate. And that is always interpreted in the mind, So if I'm going to look at, let's say I'm going to engage my spirit in the world around me and look to engage the angelic realm, to engage with my own angels or whatever's going on in the atmosphere around me, I can do that and have no awareness of what's there if my spirit isn't able to pass that information of the frequency that it's tuning into, engaging in, to my mind, either to picture it on my imagination or to know it as a thought. It has to happen within my soul. So I have to be reintegrated. And I think a lot of people, misinterpreted Ian's teaching on dividing soul and spirit. And it was almost like, well, they always need to be separated. That isn't true. You separate the false connection for independence so that then you can be completely reintegrated. That soul and spirit can come back together and be one, working fully together, so you don't even know that you're separate. And that's the ultimate, because that's Adam engaged the world around him through his spirit that was on the outside of his body. He was only self-aware through his spirit connected to God. He was only world aware through his spirit connected to God. So there was nothing that was independent of God. So the soul had no separate self-awareness apart from relationship with God through the spirit. But of course, when our spirit then implodes and comes and is then separated, the soul has no awareness other than through self-awareness, through engaging with the natural world. That's the only way it could function, because it could not have any communication through the spirit. So it was dependent on what it saw, what it tasted, what it touched, what it experienced, what it felt. And that, in a sense, then shaped the senses of the soul. So my conscience, given to me by God to direct, instinctively has some things built into it, but those things can be very quickly changed by our nurture. If you're brought up in a home that teaches good biblical values and is based on a Christian ethic, then you'll learn not to steal, not to lie, not to cheat, because you'll know those things are wrong, and your conscience will help you not to do those things. But if you're brought up in a home that, let's say, is a home of criminals, and you're brought up in a criminal environment, you may not think stealing is anything wrong with it whatsoever, and your conscience may do nothing to be able to do nothing, because you will have been shown, modeled, hey, it's okay to steal because you've got a greater need than they have. So a lot of our soul is shaped by its nurture, nature, and particularly by trauma, obviously, because that trauma can form instant pathways of connection, either to enable us to function from that experience and therefore protect ourselves or operate in fear or whatever, or dissociate from it. So the soul has the power to dissociate into different entities. And so you can have your soul as the 12-year-old boy or the 20-year-old boy or the 2-year-old boy that had an experience that effectively stopped that area of your soul maturing and growing, and it lives that way. Hence, you see some adults having tantrums because they revert back to a 8-year-old who had an experience, which is the sort of the lie busting parts, scan. It's okay, are there any parts of me that didn't mature because of some sort of trauma or abuse or something that happened? Can I reintegrate them? Absolutely. And so that they can mature. But there potentially that's there, and if it's potentially there, then the soul needs some work to enable it to be at one with the spirit. Which is why Ian Clayton does the teaching on dealing with each gate for each year of your life and seeing what happens. What happened to your conscience this year? What happened to your imagination? What happened to your reason? What happened to your subconscious mind, to your emotions? What happened to shape them? And if then what we're looking to do is to separate ourselves from the effects that the past has had in our soul, so that we can then see our spirit begin to bring alignment, so that reverence guides our conscience with the fear of the Lord, not our upbringing or nurture. So our emotions are not guided by and directed by the fear that's came as a result of a trauma. Our emotions are directed by intuition, to give us those instincts that will direct us. So everything has to flow, and each of the gateways of my spirit can have a positive effect on each of the gateways of my soul. I can be inspired by a dream through my hope gate, and my soul can be excited emotionally because, wow, look at what I've seen, and God is showing me something that he wants me to embark on a journey, and it's like, wow, I'm excited. But that's because that's come through my spirit to engage my soul in that area, which is why we need everything flowing from the inside out and everything functioning together so that we become one. Now, the more I've gone on with this, and obviously I've practiced this every day for years now, the more integrated I feel. I don't make cognitive choices and decisions very often as I used to. I'm led. I'm led by the spirit very, very much. So I don't sort of, oh, well, what do I need to do? I just do it. I find myself doing things and saying things and engaging because I'm led by my spirit, not my soul. Now, I had to go through a severe dealing with my soul in the black cloud to bring it to the point of surrender where it didn't need to know to trust God. And that was a huge turning point for me, in that my soul wanted to know because then it would feel secure. When I didn't know, then I wasn't secure and therefore needed to know. So my motivation to find things out was not pure. Some of it was motivated by how I'm wired as a prophetic sort of teaching gift or redemptive gift to unpack things and understand them, but that was mixed with the need to know to bring security rather than fear. And when I dealt with that in the black cloud, which was a really, really difficult scenario to get to that point, things changed dramatically in the reintegration of soul and spirit. And I found that my soul actually cooperated, and it was almost like, well, I just function, I'm just me, and my spirit leads and my soul follows. Now, that's not to say that I'm not perfect, and sometimes it's the other way round. And when it is the other way round, that's when I have to apply my spirit to my soul to make sure that my soul is not leading me astray. And then it would be, okay, no, I'm going to apply reverence to this decision. Is this going to please God or not? And sometimes you've got a a short space of time to take captive the thought and line it up with, is this aligned with soul or spirit? And then make a choice based on what your spirit says, rather than what your soul directs. If there's any conflict, when there's a conflict, the spirit must take charge. Well, it's never going to do that if it doesn't grow, and if you don't exercise it, and if you don't get those gates functioning and the spirit flowing and the river of life flowing through it, it won't. And if you have familiar spirits in any shape operating within your soul gates, they will set you down a pathway of behavior really quickly if you don't take captive that thought and align it, because that's what they're used to do. They're used to taking a situation, reacting to that situation, spiraling your thoughts and behavior out of control down a pathway that will lead you into guilt, shame, and condemnation ultimately, because they'll take you down the route that they've been used to controlling you in, to self-gratify. And if you self-gratify, you're going to end up in guilt and shame and condemnation. That's their design. Now, we don't have to go down that route, because we can take captive those thoughts. If we do something, we can repent and renounce it, and we can be cleansed from all unrighteousness and forgiven. If we run to God, not running from him. But most people, when they mess up, run away from him and hide, because that's the instinct that Adam and Eve created by running and hiding in the bushes and seeking to cover up. And the religious spirit will always try and get us to make amends by doing something to counteract positively what we've done negatively, and that never works. We just need to accept the blood of Jesus and be forgiven. And as soon as you get down the route of trying to make amends, then you're already in bondage to the situation. So we have to be very careful on familiar spirits and their patterns and pathways of mindsets that can take us down a particular route. Again, good teaching on familiar spirits that will, we need to deal with them in the courts, and we need to make sure we move their illegal rights of access, and then we make sure that they do not control us. And I get the impression from listening to Ian, and he did a session here with us on familiar spirits with our rehabilitation unit, getting them to see that the little voices in their minds and the little whispers are not them. It's a familiar spirit trying to take them down a familiar pattern of behavior to separate them from God. And in listening to him and talking to him, it wasn't instant that he overcame these things. He would have to catch himself, often well down the cycle, and try and stop it before it completed. And some of it for him was about how he felt about himself. The self-pity and how people treat you. And it's like, oh yeah, they'll reject you, and because rejection was an issue. And for all of us, we have different issues that take us down those cycles and pathways. But we've got to make sure that we take captive the thought as soon as possible and align it with the truth. And that then my spirit can direct my conscience to say no or to say yes, because it's not just something to protect me, it's something to direct me. My conscience is a director. Yeah, that is good, do that. Not just, no, that's bad, don't do it. So we need to reintegrate and see our soul working together, flowing together, one. The more time we spend in God's presence, the more time we spend in the atmosphere of creative light, then the more our spirit is vibrating with that frequency, and the more our soul then can come into alignment.
Mike, a question on the mechanics of, if I could, of the spirit and the soul. When I step through the veil, my spirit, it can be in two places at one time. So would I be correct if I said my spirit is still in my spirit, soul, and body here on earth, but my spirit has stepped through the veil too as well? It's in two places. And then it's feeding back, generally speaking, information for my soul to process here on this earth. Then when someone like Ian talks about, I'm in a meeting and he gets kind of lost from it, I'm in two places right now, I'm here speaking to you guys, but I'm over somewhere else doing something else. It's the same thing, only he's able to translate through his soul, his spirit here on earth, he's seeing stuff, and also he's off somewhere else seeing stuff, and his soul is processing two places at one time.
Yeah.
But so your spirit never really, it leaves your body, but your spirit is still in your body.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's your spirit can leave your body, but my understanding of it and my experience of it is, if I join myself to the Lord and become one spirit with Him, then even if my spirit completely leaves my body, then the Holy Spirit is still, I'm still connected and one with Him. Now, in a sense, if my spirit is a dimensional place within my soul, within my body, in the gateways diagram, then it's capable of being in two realms at the same time. But it depends what you focus on to what you're receiving from. And I think that's where, my spirit, I know I engaged this morning, and my spirit engaged in the realm, so it's on my mountain in the realm of heaven, and it's connected there, and my spirit can do things there that I'm not necessarily consciously aware of here. And people have said that they've seen me doing things in the realm of heaven that I can't remember. I asked them, and they said, well, where was I? What did I look like? What was I wearing? What did I do? I asked them questions, and they would say, well, you were doing this, and I was like, okay. Because, of course, my spirit is available to God. Now, because I want to engage in that realm, I want that realm to affect what I'm doing in this realm, so I want the kingdom, the governmental rule of my spirit in heaven affecting everything I do, think, say in this realm. So that's really where I'm sort of living in dual realms. And it's like the consciousness of my spirit is in that realm, but the dimension of my spirit is still within. That's sort of how I would sort of say it. It's like my spirit has consciousness that can engage in the realm of heaven, but it also has a form that stays within me as a dimension where the kingdom is, where God realm is in me. Because if God is living in me and I step out of me, then He's no longer in me. So it's this, He's in me, I'm in Him. So we're trying to sort of see this as a whole and just live this way. And it sometimes helps to see how these things work mechanically in one sense, but on another it can well, how do it's like I'm sort of, I got schizophrenia, and it's like I'm, hearing voices from heaven and I'm hearing voices in my head. Well, actually they're all in our head, whether we're in heaven or not. But some of them, sometimes my spirit is engaged and I'm not conscious of what it's doing and what it's receiving, but it doesn't make it any less valid that it's doing something or receiving something. But I guess we're learning to understand this. Now, when Ian Clayton does that, he gets distracted often from what he's doing here, because he's not able just to be completely separate. So he's like, whoa, I'm sort of distracted, and he gets distracted. Because it's like, well, I'm doing something somewhere else. Yeah. I think the key is not to be distracted. So to be guided and directed by what my spirit's doing there, so that I can live here as an outworking and be a gateway of heaven on the earth. But I'm just learning, in some of these things and trying to understand and outwork it, and I've found something that's sort of working for me. But there's always deeper levels of understanding with God, and deeper levels of connecting with Him, and I don't know. How much do we know of God? Well, it must be a multiple fraction of who God is, because He's infinite. You know.
Mike,
Yeah.
I don't know if the terminology is correct. People talk about overshadowing. So in other words, they'll go down and they can, like Ian talks about, I believe that he's gone to a place to check it out before he goes to do the meeting. So I imagine he's doing that through his spirit. Or someone will say, I've gone into the White House and I saw what the president was doing and I know and therefore I could pray. Or my child was over there and I went down, I overshadowed him and did whatever. Have you ever experienced where you've gone your spirit and gone to another place? Do you know what I'm talking? Does it make any sense what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Well, that's what your spirit does when you send it to engage.
I don't come up right now, but anyway.
Yeah. I mean that's literally what you're looking to do. I mean, the counterfeit obviously is astral projection, but your spirit is engaging in the realm of the spirit in this dimension, rather than the realm of the kingdom of heaven or perfection or whatever. So it's a spiritual dimension in this one that your spirit can engage and see. People aren't necessarily aware of you, obviously. They're not seeing you. If they do see you, then they're obviously tuned into that spiritual realm and looking. And people have said that they've seen others. I mean, the cloud of witnesses, for instance, coming, would be their spirit engaging in this realm so that you see them. So definitely you can look to go spiritually and encounter somewhere. I mean, I did that when I went over to the Northwest. I sent my spirit to look and see, and it's just like, what is it seeing? This is the thing. I wasn't looking, when I went, I didn't go into any one particular place, so I wasn't looking into the physical atmosphere, but I certainly wanted to look into the atmosphere of the earth, and I wanted to look into, in a sense, the spiritual dimension that was going on over there. I didn't choose to go into a particular physical place when I went, but I did want to look at what's going on here spiritually in the atmosphere, and look, and then I wrote down what I sensed, and that then I took that back to God and say, I need a mandate to deal with this. What's my mandate in this of what I've seen? But it's something you have to learn. I mean, it's like being translated rather than being trans-relocated. If you're trans-relocated, you're going to go there and you're going to be seen. If you're translated, your spirit can go there and you may not be seen unless someone's looking.
Have you ever had the experience where you've actually gone into an event that was taking place in your spirit? You could see, you were right there where they were speaking or whatever, and
I think of something when I've done that. No, I don't think so. Not because I've never really felt led to do it. I only want to do what I feel my spirit leading me to do, and I've never really felt. I've gone into the atmosphere to look at what are the dynamics spiritually. I wouldn't want to intrude on people and intrude on the desires of their heart, because I don't want to engage. I mean, Jesus discerned the thoughts and intentions of people's hearts. I don't want to do that, personally, because I don't want to intrude on people's personal space. I could, but I'm not going to. I mean, I can look into their angelic realm and see their angels and things like that, but I don't feel led to go any deeper than that in someone's heart. Because they're personally responsible for that. I don't want to become responsible for what I see. So I certainly not something I want to go and do. So I don't. And of course,
Mike,
yeah.
in a way, what you did in the Pacific, for example, back in 94, 95, if the airport, John Arnott was going somewhere, to send a couple of people, it happened times, and they'd walk around the area that he was going to speak, and they'd find out what was going on there, and they'd do what they need. Usually it was intercessors. and because I know one of the ladies that did that, and they do what they needed to do. And in fact, that's so you didn't have to go there physically. That's what really you did. The same thing.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You don't have to go physically. You can engage your spirit where that is, particularly if you've got a mandate for it. Say you've been invited to come, then that gives you a mandate to go and engage, and then you're looking, okay, God, what do you want me to do? Because just because you see something doesn't necessarily authorize you to deal with it. But if there are things going on that you need to send angels ahead of time, or you need to protect, or then you can do that by engaging in that realm and being aware. I certainly seen some things spiritually that I have no authority to deal with at this point, or hadn't had, and then later did get authority and then dealt with some things spiritually because I engaged at that level. For me, I've got enough on my plate in what I'm already doing and what I'm already authorized and mandated to do, without sort of engaging in anything like that at this point in time. And I've never really felt the desire to do it. It's just not something that I feel, well, I'm going to go and, I just go and ask God, for instance, Ian Clayton, when we invited him to come here, he came over, he said, in the spirit to see what was going on. We were basically in the midst of 3 months of revival meetings and different things every night. He was aware of that going on, so that validated his coming for his perspective. I get an invite to go to the Northwest. My spirit resonates with that invitation, but I go and ask God, am I permitted to go? I wouldn't send my spirit into the atmosphere to go and discern whether I wanted to go. Because I don't know, if Ian Clayton had not seen the revival in the atmosphere, would he have wanted to come? And was that decision based on his personal desire or what God wanted him to do? I don't know. For me, it's like I'll ask God.
Yeah.
So if I get any sort of resonance with anything, I go and seek for authorization from God of what to do. I wouldn't want my soul involved in the process in a way of, well, hey, of course, it's really hard over there, therefore I don't want to go. Otherwise, when I did go and look into the atmosphere over the Northwest, I wouldn't have gone. But I looked after I was authorized to go, not before. Because if I went over there and looked at all the lawlessness and everything that was going on, I might have thought, flip, this is going to be a hard trip, I don't want to go. So I didn't give my soul an opportunity of actually making that sort of decision. I went and looked after I was authorized, that gave me some insight, and then sought for what God wanted me to do as a result of that, which is different. Anyway, all right, I better